Hey guys, Mr. Jones here again, and we are going to do one last video for Unit 1. We are going to be writing absolute value inequalities. Okay, now these are going to be a little bit trickier of a problem to do. Okay, that's why I saved it for last. And there's going to be, it's just a step-by-step process of how to solve these. Okay, so I'm going to do one example on the boards, and then I am going to do more examples, more like word problems on a worksheet that I will film that way. Let's go through this one and the steps that we need to solve these, and it's going to be the same each time. So this is asking us, what is the absolute value inequality equivalent to the compound inequality? Okay, so just breaking down what that means, it's giving us this compound inequality that we talked about before, what those are, but it wants us to write an absolute value inequality. And what is that? Well, that's just like, right, x minus something is less than or equal to something, right? That would be an example of an absolute inequality, okay? So what it's saying is this compound inequality can be written in an equivalent way to an absolute value inequality, okay? And it wants us to do that, okay? So there's gonna be a three-step process, okay? And I'm gonna write those in a second. Okay, so I have a number line up here now, and I just wanna draw here real quick what this is saying. X, again, if I flip that around, X could be greater than 15, X is less than or equal to 37. Okay, so that's what this statement is saying. Okay, so step one to solve these is going to be to find the average, find the average of your upper and lower numbers. And what I mean by left and right numbers is just these two values here. So finding the average of those two. And how do we do that? Right, so doing that, that just means I need to add them together. So 15 plus 37. And then just divide by the number of numbers in that list. So in this case, that's just 2. Okay, so 15 plus 37 would give me 52. 52 divided by 2 would give me 26. So 26 is kind of the average, or the another word would be like the middle, right? And that's why I wanted to draw this, is because 26 would be like here, right? And that would be like right in the middle of these 2 points, okay? And that's going to be a key number for my absolute value inequality that I'm trying to write, okay? So that's step one, is find that average. Step two is going to be to take your rightmost number minus the average or middle number that you just found, okay, from step one. So you take your rightmost number, in this case that would be 37, and then you subtract your average, which you just found, okay, so that would be 26. And so you do 37 minus 26, that gives you 11. Okay, now that's going to be the other key number for our absolute value inequality. But what does that come from? What is that saying? Okay, well, look at this. Look back at the number line, okay? If I went from my middle to this farthest point, that distance would be 11, right? From 26 to 37, that would be 11 spaces away. But also, 26 to 15, that's also 11 spaces away. So what I did was I found kind of my distance from my highest to lowest value. I found the distance from the middle, or the average point, to those. Okay, and again, as we formulate this absolute value inequality, I'll explain why that's important. But yeah, that's where that comes from, that 11. So we did steps 1 and steps 2. I found my average, that was 26, and then I found my second number, my right number, minus my average, which is 11. Okay, and so step 3, we are ready to put together my absolute value inequality. Okay, so at this point in the problem, in my original video, I realized that I made a mistake, but there's a funny moment that I had, so enjoy this. The absolute value of that, less than or equal to 26. My dog's here, licking my feet. Here, I'll show her. Hold on. Hi, Lacey. Hello. I'm filming a math lesson. Okay. Good pup. She's a great pup. I gotta shut the door. Hope you enjoyed meeting Lacey there. And here we go, step 3. So we found our 2 key values, okay? And so step 3 is just putting those together into our absolute value inequality, okay? And so what that's gonna look like every time is x minus your average that you found in step 1. So x minus the average, or the middle, is less than or equal to, and it's always going to be less than or equal to here, okay? Just depends if it's going to have an equal to if the original did, but this is always going to be less than or equal to. And then it is your number that I'll just say the number that you found in step 2. So like here for 11, that would be the number that we put there, okay? So it's the absolute value of x minus your average number that you found in step 1 is less than or equal to the number you found in step 2. So putting that together here, that would be absolute value of x minus 26 is less than or equal to 11. Okay, so that would be my absolute value inequality. So I'm done here. I'm done with the problem. But what does this actually mean? Okay, how are these two the same? Well, what I found here is basically like at the start of this problem, it's like it was giving me an answer, and I just found like the original problem. So it's almost like a reverse type thing. It gives you the answer, you give what the original equation was, or inequality. So yeah, how do we know this works? Okay, well let's check. Okay, let's plug in these values at least, and then I'll explain what the kind of the rest of the answer means. So if I plug in 15, I do 15 minus 26. That should be less than or equal to 11, right? And so 15 minus 26 would be negative 11. And negative 11, the absolute value of negative 11 is 11. So yes, 11 is less than or equal to 11. It's key that that equal to is there for this one. And then if I plugged in 37, it would be 37 minus 26 is positive 11. Then the absolute value of positive 11 is 11, and same thing. So basically what this is saying is like 15 and 37 are my lower and upper bounds, right? Because that would give me exactly 11. And then it's saying any number between these two would still work here because it would, like, let's just pick 20. Okay, so if I did 20 minus 26, right, negative 6, less than or equal to 11. So the absolute value of negative 6 is 6. So yeah, 6 is less than or equal to 11. Okay, and I could, so any number between 15 and 37 would work. Okay, but if I chose a number outside of that range, so let's say I choose 50, 50 minus 26, so I subtract those and I get 24. So the absolute value of 24 is 24, and 24 is not less than or equal to 11, so that wouldn't work. So I'm actually going to do some more like word problems similar to this on a worksheet. So I will film that right now. So here we go. Alrighty guys, here we go with writing absolute value inequalities. First one says write the absolute value inequality that is equivalent to the compound inequality, and it tells us 50 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 80. Okay, so if you remember your steps from the first example we did, our first step is to take the average of the two. So that would be 50 plus 80 over 2. Okay, so 50 plus 80 is 130. 130 divided by 2 is 65. So that is going to be one of the key numbers that I'm going to use in my answer, my absolute value inequality. Is you take your right number minus your average. Again, it's telling you kind of the distance between each number and the middle, the average. So that would be 80 minus 65, and that is 15. So that's your other key number. So then step 3 is putting it together. And so again, it is x minus your average is less than or equal to your second number, or your number in step 2. Okay, so here that would be absolute value x minus 65 is less than or equal to 15. How do we go if we're given the absolute value inequality to the answer? Just to show you that it's equivalent forms of each other. This is another form of this, and so on. Okay. But if you remember what I said in the first video, or the first problem, excuse me, is that this is kind of the answer to this. Okay. So if we solved solved the inequality, we should get something like this as an answer. Okay, so, and we learned that. We actually learned how to do this already. This is more of just like a review type problem. Okay, so this one says the absolute value x minus 10 is less than or equal to 4. Okay, so remember, you want to check and see, is your absolute value by itself on that side? And it is, which means we are ready to split it. We're splitting this puppy into two separate inequalities. So without the absolute value, it's just the same. X minus 10 is less than or equal to 4. And then this one would be x minus 10, again, double flip, greater than or equal to negative 4. Okay, so we got to do that with our absolute value inequalities. And then we solve both of these. So we plus 10 to both sides of the first one. And I do that, and I'm left with x is less than or equal to 14. Nice, so that is one of my solutions. And then the other one would be plus 10, x is greater than or equal to 6. So hopefully you remember this process. But again, we talked about this. This right here, these two answers, that's normally how we wrote it. We can rewrite this as a compound inequality, right? Because this would be, if you remember what I said, less than or equal to problems, this would be an and solution, okay? And yeah, we can rewrite that then as 6 is less than or equal to x, right? That's just this answer flipped around. 6 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 14. Okay, so that is the compound inequality. So again, seeing that this is the kind of the equation or the original version, and this would be the answer version. Okay, now two word problems, a little bit trickier, like always with word problems, okay? Number 3 says a teacher's monthly earnings are based on the number of years experience they have at the school as well as the highest degree they have attained. Teachers' salaries range from $2,600 to $3,800 per month. Alrighty, so first question it's asking says, write a compound inequality to describe E, the amount of monthly earnings for teachers. So E, that's just defining the variable for us. That's just saying, okay, instead of X, we're going to use the letter E, but it doesn't really matter. But it wants us to write a compound inequality. Again, what's that? A compound inequality is this, the answer version, okay, where we have these two numbers on the outside and the variable on the inside using our less than or equal to's. And so we're given that here, right? We're given kind of our lowest and highest number. So it's going to look really similar to one of the ones we already did, just with these values. So this is really going to be 2,600 is less than or equal to E, my variable for this one, which is less than or equal to 3,800. Again, when you give a compound inequality, that's kind of giving a span of numbers, which means for this scenario, it would be kind of saying teacher salaries could be anything from 2,600 to 3,800, and you know, those exactly or any number in between. But now that we have that, we are ready to rewrite that compound inequality as an absolute value inequality, just like I did for the previous problems. Okay, so same steps. Step 1, find the average. So that would be 2,600 plus 3,800 over 2. So 2,600 divided by 38, or plus 3,800, excuse me, would be 6,400 divided by 2, and that would be 3,200. 3,200 is the average. Once I have the average, step 2, again, I do the right side minus the average. So that would be the 3,800 minus 3,200, and that is 600. Okay, so that's my number for step 2. So I have my average, I have my second step number, and so step 3, putting it together in an absolute value inequality. Again, same pattern as always, just like the one up here, right? So x minus 3,200 is less than or equal to the second step number, 600. There we go. One more problem, just to make sure you got it, okay? Number 4 says, to enlist in the United States Army, you must be between the ages of 17 and 34. That's actually true, just in case you're interested in joining the Army or a branch military. For the Army, people age 17 must need parental consent. So if you're thinking about dropping out of school and joining the Army, I appreciate you. That's a noble thing to do, but make sure if you're 17, you get parent consent. Anyway, back to the math. So write a compound inequality to describe the age you can be to enlist in the Army. So again, it gives us this span of numbers, 17 and 34. So you can be exactly 17, you can be exactly 34, or any number in between that, okay? So a way that we say that in a compound inequality would be 17 is less than or equal to, it doesn't define a variable for us, so I'm just going to stick with x, which is less than or equal to 34. So anything between those ages and including those ages, you can be to join the Army. Okay, now, second question, write that compound inequality as an absolute value inequality. So we want to write this as an absolute value inequality. So again, same steps. Average, 17 plus 34 over 2. So 17 plus 34 is 51. 51 divided by 2, we're going to get a decimal here, 25.5. And that's okay. Decimals exist, so we'll deal with it. Okay, now, second step. Again, the right side number minus the average that you just found. So it'd be 34 minus 25.5. And that ends up being 34 minus 25 would be 9. So 34 minus 25.5 would be 8.5. Okay, now step 3. Again, organizing these two values into an absolute value inequality. So it'd be x minus your average, 25.5, less than or equal to, it's always that inequality symbol, 8.5. So there we go. There are some absolute value inequalities for you. Hopefully it makes sense, these word problems especially. Good job. And that is it for Unit 1. So we made it. Good stuff.